Hello, and welcome to the Grow Patiently podcast, the podcast where we speak with various healthcare leaders to learn all about their journeys in their career, what they're doing in their clinics, and hopefully to learn one or two things from them. My name's Hugo Trace. I'm the host of this podcast, and I'm from growpatiently.com. You can learn more about us by heading right there. And I'm going to pass over to my guest to introduce himself.
Hi Hugo, thanks for having me. I'm Dr Asad Rahman. I'm the clinical director at GenSmile Dental. We are a group that owns and operates 38 practices across England and the Channel Islands.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. So thank you so much for coming. I actually didn't know that you were in the Channel Islands as well. That's cool. Whereabouts in the Channel Islands?
Guernsey and Jersey. So yeah, we've
Ah,
got a couple of
nice.
practices on both islands.
Oh, lovely.
Visited there a couple of times, and it's always a nice flight over. I don't know if you've ever been
I
yourself.
have, yeah, and it's like a 15-minute flight. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Oh, I suppose depending on where you go from. I think when I went from Exeter, which was even
yeah.
shorter.
Yeah, I flew from Southampton myself. That's where I always fly from. So it's always an interesting journey because you get
Yeah.
those tiny planes, don't you?
Yeah. You got to get down to Sark. I don't know if you've been there, the island that has no cars.
No, I should go next time I'm there.
Yeah. It's a small trip on a boat from Guernsey. And yeah, I used to have a friend who actually lived there, so I went and visited him quite a lot. Anyway, big sidetrack already. Um, so at the start of these podcasts, I always like to say a couple of things. One of which is that before we start, I am sort of slowly, I suppose, trying to get the word out there a little bit about this podcast. So if you're a listener and you take anything from this podcast that you enjoy or something that's interesting, we have a small tax essentially, which is that if you do, then you need to pay the tax, which is just simply you tell one person about this podcast. That's it. Just get on the WhatsApp group, share this one video or whatever it is, share the link to one other person or tell them in person if you want to do IRL, as the kids would say. Um, and then the second thing is that I had this idea now that I've done the podcast so many times to do a bit of a tour of all the places where people either live or work. And so I'm going to ask you, Asad, where in York, right, which is where you're based, if I go there, what do I need to experience? Where should I go to really experience the city like a local or, like a tourist really should? What do you think?
That's a great question, and I always laugh and joke to friends and family, and I say I do the unofficial tour of York. So, as you can imagine, with a lot of well, York is a big city, but by name, let's say, you have those tourist buses that drive around, and then they'll do the official tour, but I'll do the unofficial tour, which is the actual places you want to go to eat and
Tell
the kind of
me.
cool places to hang out. So yeah, I definitely recommend going to the Shambles and visiting there, seeing the history. If you're certainly if you're kind of a Harry Potter or a fan of kind of those TV series, those movie series. Um, that's where J.K. Rowling got the inspiration for Diagon Alley. Um, and then the other famous bit about York, I'd say, is the whole host of coffee shops and restaurants. And again, if you look online, you'll see the ones, as we always do, the ones that have paid the most to be higher ranked up on Google. So yeah, definitely ask a local when you visit to find the real places to visit.
Love it. Well, thank you. Yeah, next time I go to York, north of England, for those of you over in
Yeah.
America, I'll be sure to check it out. So let's dive in. Let's talk about your career in healthcare. Why don't you tell us how did you get where you currently are? What's your story?
So I'm a dentist by background. I qualified in 2015 from the University of Leeds, and as with most dentists, started working in a kind of NHS practice, which is for the viewers in America, our national health system here, and very quickly realized that if I wanted to develop my career, I'd have to do a kind of a lot of self-development. Unlike medicine in the UK, where there is a pathway for progression, dentists we're kind of left to our own devices if we want to develop our careers. So I fell into this pathway of focusing on different types of dentistry that I enjoyed, I suppose, at the time, and moved on to an aspect where I was focusing on restorative dentistry, which, for people who aren't dentists watching, is just generally improving, your smile. I then, after spending lots and lots of money on courses, education, lots of university level courses, realized that the only thing I liked was root canal dentistry. So I then went and self-funded that. And it was during these kind of times and these time periods where a big part of my journey is based on kind of, I suppose at the time, personal tragedy, then resilience, having to get out of difficult moments. So I sadly, early part of my career went through a divorce, then lost my father around about the time of COVID through cancer. And it was a real make or break moment for me. And a lot of the things I talk about in healthcare, especially to younger clinicians, is it's all well and good having a plan in your mind about I'm going to go out of university and do this, but then what happens when life gets in the way, and how do you actually end up to the same place where you want to be? And then the other bit that happens there, as you all know, Hugo, is you set off on one pathway and then another opportunity comes out of the blue. And so I was fully set on becoming the best clinician possible and just working as a dentist. I was one of those dentists that was happy working in practice 5, 6 days a week, didn't tire me out, just loved it. And I still work clinically a couple of days a month now. And I don't count that as work. I just love it. But then this whole new career opportunity just landed on my doorstep where it was more leadership management and working with large dental groups.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. I'm sorry to hear, of course, by your tragedy. That's yeah, it can't have been easy at all. And I mean, thinking even to my own, not that these things are ever comparable, but I'd say the one thing that is comparable is what it makes of you afterwards. You know,
Yeah,
it does knock you off your kilter and certainly sets you on a new path. But yeah, interesting. So, okay, going from clinical into the leadership position is potentially something that a lot of dentists are thinking, and a lot of people in healthcare clinics more generally. You know, they're working and really, well, this is my experience, I'd say, they really pour themselves into their craft,
yeah,
whichever healthcare sort of focus they're in. Um, when you say that it fell in your lap, what can people do? I mean, you tell us what you did first, but then what do you think people can do to help them find this next avenue if they're maybe thinking, a bit stuck where I am?
yeah. I think for me, within any industry, and now obviously we'll touch on. I'm involved in multiple industries now outside of healthcare as well. But within any industry, I think the first bit is about becoming an expert in your field, and then opportunities come about. So for me, I was working as part of a large dental group as a dentist in a large dental group who at the time owned 75-ish practices, now currently own 400 odd. So one of the largest dental groups, and not mentioning the name, but everyone knows who they are. Um, and still got great relationships there. Um, I was working at one of their practices, and an opportunity came about to essentially be a clinical leader. And my role and remit at the time was to work with operational colleagues and essentially look after clinicians, engage with them, make sure that they were providing dentistry, yes, compliant, in line with compliance, but also, I suppose, motivating and encourage them to make the best out of their careers. And I quickly realized that my natural skill set lent itself towards that. And then me being me, when that started to snowball and became more of a career for me, and I ended up going from 5 days in practice to 4 days, then 3 days. I realized I needed some kind of formal qualification behind me. So I went and did a MBA at the University of Warwick. So that was kind of my fifth qualification from a UK university. And that gave me then opened up even further doors. So I suppose my answer to everyone is, take every opportunity that comes your way, but then at some point you've got to sit down and decide, even though I love clinical dentistry and I love working clinically as a clinician, for me, the opportunity became too big to not kind of throw myself into that field fully.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, for the people who've listened to this podcast before or know me a little bit, my story is that I was a teacher. Actually, at
Yeah,
one point, I was even a chef, not the best one, but but yeah, I had that similar thing that I got really good at teaching and I continued to push myself, but I saw this opportunity to do something different and start my own business, and
yeah,
yeah, it completely changed my life. So it's just about kind of staying open to these things. I wanted to ask you. obviously you've been around so many practices, and you must have seen some brilliant ones and some less brilliant, and you probably had to go into some that are less brilliant and try to bring them up to speed, I imagine, in your role. Um, and I'm always thinking, how can I make this podcast be useful for people who are listening outside of just me and enjoying it? And yeah, I thought, what would be your sort of top tips for people to think about their own clinic to make sure that they're on the right side of that scale?
Yeah. I mean, as you're touching on, over the past 5, 6 years doing roles like this, and obviously now as clinical director and board member at Gensmar, I've visited, hundreds of practices. I visit at least a couple of practices a week. And for me, there's lots of aspects that go into, but if you're looking at the starting point, and I talk about this a lot, the starting point has to be the culture and your visions and values. So the reason why that has to be the starting point is because that is often what we can dictate as directors and board members of any organization top down. We can dictate having a culture that we live ourselves rather than just kind of words on a paper. We can dictate the vision of the group. And then what we need to leave open to interpretation, I suppose, is how those meet with what you find locally in practices. And what we mean by that is the individual nature of not just the people within the practice, but where the practice is located, for example. So you can be part of a group, but our practice in Manchester is going to be vastly different to our practice in Dorset because people and patients in Manchester are different to people and patients in Dorset. And that's where I always talk about great starting off with your culture, visions, and values at a group level, but then leaving it open to interpretation within the practice, as long as somebody isn't going too far off it. So a big thing, at Gensmar for us is that our four values are: we care, we support, we grow, we excel. And as long as we see aspects of that coming out within all our practices, we're happy. So, and this can be tailored to if you have one practice, two practices, or hundreds of practices. You start off with the culture, visions, and values, and make sure that people live by those day to day. And then you can get into the other nitty gritty operational aspects, clinical aspects. But it starts off with that for me.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I really like the idea of being flexible as well, even within a singular team,
Yeah,
because obviously people are different and they, caring, for example, can be presented in a different way depending on the way that you
exactly.
are. One thing I find interesting about culture is a lot of people want to get that written on a piece of paper or, Google Doc, and they're like, yes, done this thing. Um, but for me, certainly it's about the way that I do my work is like the culture that I'm setting as a leader. And that's what people see. And then they continue to do that. So if you let something negative happen or they see you doing something in a positive way, they want to do more. I was wondering, is that something that you also have experienced? How do you let the people see? How about this? Yeah, how do you let the people see in
Yeah.
each practice what like the board and what the senior leadership are doing so that it filters that culture through?
I think the first bit is not just visibility but accessibility. So, um, uh, at Gensmar we pride ourselves, and I certainly pride myself on having within my first 6 months in a row, I visited all of our practices at least once, and I feel that straight away showed that we want to be working with teams in practice, not just clinicians but all our colleagues in practice, to try and be accessible and not just visible. And increasing transparency in terms of decision making is another key thing you have to focus on. Um, we all have tough decisions to make, but if we're able to explain that and why that decision's been made and can stand by that decision, then it becomes a lot easier for people to understand. So I think those are the two key bits I like to focus on myself, is making sure I'm accessible, not just visible, but also then transparent in my decision making.
Yeah, I think again, transparent in decision making sounds like something that you would have maybe read in an MBA book, but actually living it out in the way that you've said, detailing what the decision is and how you came to it is totally different. I think a lot of people, when they're leading, they just say like, "This is what we're doing now," and
Yeah.
and crack on with it. Really, what do you think is the biggest challenge that dental practices and maybe healthcare practices are about to face or are facing and maybe are not even aware of it just yet?
I think macroeconomically, we're living in a time where just the UK in general. So again, for audiences across the world, I'm talking about the UK. So, um, but particular trends are worldwide with what we're all facing. Um, the one thing that we're lucky, I suppose, in healthcare, and it's a completely different conversation I'm having in a non-healthcare setting where I'm also a director of another company, is we know people need dentistry. We're always going to have, I hate using this word, but customers. Um, and with that in mind, really the world goes in cycles. So you can tailor your offering um, in terms of what's going on macroeconomically. But throughout history, people will need healthcare, will need, check their teeth checked, their oral health looked after. And for us in dentistry, it's about explaining that value and why that's important. So moving forwards, and I know we'll probably touch on the future of healthcare in a bit, we know that as time passes, and even the studies that are coming out now, the mouth and oral health is not just limited to what we see orally and what we see as teeth. It's linked to your whole body and systemically. And the more awareness we can raise in dentistry and healthcare about that, the better our lives are all going to be. So a big focus is, and the best practices I see, they're very easily able to explain to patients the importance of their oral health in terms with their general health, and then also show a caring and willingness to look after their whole health and not just the mouth. And that way, you know, we all see service and value as what we perceive, and people can perceive that as the most caring nature because we're looking after themselves, not just their teeth.
Yes. I think having that joined up thinking between medical professions is interesting because a lot of people they just think they go to the dentist, they have to have a filling, which for a lot of people just sounds like something that's either A, painful, B, expensive, or C, maybe not necessary. And what they don't understand is that that could well be having an effect. This is the gateway to your body, really. There's only a few of them. And it causes a lot of issues. I mean, one of the things that I've really noticed is I noticed in the pregnancy books, I mentioned to you that I'm an expecting father, and so are you,
Yeah,
and which is great for both of us. And yeah, I saw in the books that pregnancy can have a huge impact on your teeth and on your gums, and they offer like free dental care for
yeah,
mothers as well, which kind of shows how important it is because they don't usually give things away for free. And yeah, I think that's really interesting what you said about maybe even raising awareness of that because I just don't think that patients really in the UK know that.
no. I think the more we can do um, generally to raise awareness of that, the better all our lives will be. And I also look at, just general healthcare studies. There's going to be big links between our gut health. I mean, we're already seeing this in what people are doing for their health. And there's going to be big links between gut health and systemic health. And I think the way we think about not just dentistry, but healthcare in general is going to be completely different in 50 years. And some of that is natural because, what did we think about health 50 years ago and what do we think about it now? So, yes, naturally we'll know more, but I think there'll be a massive jump now between, let's say, the past 20 years. And a lot of people talk about this as what I was listening to someone talk about this the other day where they were saying, and they've been in dentistry 30 years and said the biggest jump they've seen is the past 5 years compared to the previous 25 years with not just newer awareness coming into dentistry and the fact that it's not just teeth, but also newer products and newer services and newer technologies coming into it.
Well, it's a big industry. So
Yeah.
lots of other businesses, the B2Bs, start getting very excited when they think about dentistry and healthcare more generally, I suppose. Tell us about these other businesses you're involved in. People must be thinking, wow, how does this guy have the time to be involved in multiple businesses? I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, well, to answer that backwards, I've got a very supportive partner. So she's, yeah, she supports me a lot. And that's probably where I find the time to be able to do everything. Um, on the other businesses, so I am the UK and Ireland director for Ascenta Group. Ascenta Group are a installer of paddle courts and supplier of paddle equipment. They're a Scandinavian-based stock-listed company, so a very large organisation. I fell into that during the time when I was about to finish my MBA. A friend of mine was kind of approached by a centre group to run their UK and Irish division. And he said it's a big task for him. Would I be interested? And leadership, what I've found is leadership across any organization is the same, even across industries, because you're still following the same processes and protocols. Yes, the product that you're offering again to customers, I hate using that word, but using it again, is vastly different. Um, but what you're doing as a leader to make sure that quality of service comes out is the same. So past 18 months, been working with the centre. We've had good success in the UK and Ireland markets. Our largest clients are in Ireland, who are having over 100 paddle courts off us. We've currently installed about 30 odd in the island of Ireland, and we're hoping to, obviously ramp that installation up towards the 100 mark. And in across the UK, we've had multiple projects as well. So yeah, going relatively to well in that field as well.
It's amazing seeing what's happening with paddle. I mean, I
Yeah,
haven't really played it, but it's just it. Every time I read anything about it, it's the fastest growing sport. The world's gone
yeah,
crazy for it. So you
yeah.
got in just at the right time.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of people say to me, "Do I play paddle?" I think I was mentioned to you a little while back. I'm a big tennis player, so I play tennis every week. Paddle, I'll play, once, twice a month. Um, the few times when I start off playing paddle again, knowing that, working through a centre, they'd invite us to head office in Scandinavia, and we'd go, and they said, "Oh, just jump on this court and have a game of paddle," and I'd end up playing with the kind of the Norwegian number one or the Norwegian number two, and just get absolutely hammered. So I thought this isn't my sport. But then whenever I've played kind of at an amateur level, I realised, tennis comes across. I'm not too bad at it.
Yeah, not easy playing the best people,
No.
naturally. It's been really interesting hearing about all these different aspects you have as sort of skill sets within your career. And I think it's something I've tried to do for myself. You know, stacking different skills makes you really unique. I remember reading something about Steve Jobs that he had done a calligraphy class. This is obviously the owner or the leader of Apple. Everyone knows Steve Jobs. He needs no introduction.
Yeah.
Anyway, when he started creating the fonts for Apple, he had this idea to create multiple fonts just based on this calligraphy course that he'd done all those years ago. And I suppose it's trying to hammer the point across that when you take up different things, you essentially become more unique and you have more skills, and it helps later. You're certainly someone who's done that. And yeah, I thought, are there any examples where you've really thought, wow, I'm so glad that I did that little thing that didn't seem that important at the time, and it's actually really broadened my career experience?
Massively, I think every experience you have, I think this is what you don't realize at the time as you're touching on how important that will be later on. And for me, certainly, in my 20s, let's say, I would focus a lot on, and I say this to a lot of young dentists coming out of dental school, is focus a lot on the softer skills. So your communication, your aspects of dentistry, which aren't just, working on teeth, because those are the skills later on in your career that are going to give you the most benefit. Naturally, as time passes, you're going to become a better clinician, even if you don't do any courses. But nobody ever does no course. In the UK, we have to do our continuing professional development. So we'll do courses on dentistry and clinical skills, but it's how we pick up those softer skills. And a really funny example I use years and years ago is anything you do, which is why I now say to my son, don't waste your time. He's turning 8, and he'll have these days where he'll go, I want to go on the iPad. And I say, that's fine. You can go on the iPad for an hour or two, but what are you doing on the iPad? I'd rather him, even if he goes on YouTube, he watches, a cooking video or something like that, rather than just,
Yeah.
something brainless. And years ago, when I was a kid, I used to play this game called Football Manager. Lots of you might have heard of this, and it's such a strange game. It
Yeah.
becomes very addictive, takes over your
That
life.
was a piece of a lot of people's history.
Yeah, when you were younger, yeah, when you
Yeah.
if you're growing up in England as a teenage boy, you probably played it. And the funny thing is, in that there was I remember one day that you do contract negotiations with fake players. I mean, they're real in the real world, but in your game. And I was doing this contract negotiation, and I couldn't figure out what to do. And then in the end, I got the deal done. And then years and years later, I was sat in a meeting where they were saying, "Look, we're having an issue with." A nurse who we've got two nurses. One is they both want to be head nurse, and we can't afford to pay them both head nurse. And obviously, position wise, we've only got one position. They're both really great. We want to retain them, and if we lose them, if we lose even one of them, the other's role is going to be impacted because what they each do, they bring different things. And so I sat there, and again, this is an example of where, even though I'm clinical, you can offer experiences. And I sat there and I said, well, what exactly is going to entail in their role? And we decided, based on what I'd seen years ago of Football Manager, we changed the titles and gave them both a different title based on what their roles would be, utilize the salary in a different manner, and managed to retain them both. So it's really funny how anything you do, even when you're younger, you don't know what impact or thought you might get years and years later, which is why I always say in your teens and 20s, don't waste your time.
Yeah. Don't waste your time. Play Football Manager.
Yeah, play Football Manager.
Of all the games, it was a serious game for anyone who didn't play it. It was serious. You had to scout players. It wasn't just sort of playing the game, as
You
in
might get
football game.
sponsored for your podcast. That'd be a good one, wouldn't it?
That would be brilliant. I think I saw them on Netflix now. I mean, it's the game that just never gives up.
No.
It's huge. So I wanted to ask you, what's next for the group then? What's happening? 26 to 30. I no doubt you've got huge plans.
Yeah. I mean, Gensmile founded in 2014. Our CEO, Simon Turton, founded the group. The overall group holding also owns Dental Care Ireland in Ireland. So there's another 39 practices in Ireland which sit under the same group. Um, so relatively large group. Our strategy is not to be patient facing in England and Channel Islands. We don't brand our practices. We maintain the same kind of local arrangement practices have had, which, going back to the initial piece about, culture, visions and values from a group level, are even more important because each practice has its own brand identity. So we're not branded to patients, but certainly we're having a big focus on, marketing and branding ourselves to the profession, which, when I joined the board last year and came on in my role in July last year, 2025, was, a big piece for me. So we've focused on a lot of initiatives to raise the awareness about Gen Smile. We now have our own academy where we've partnered with some of the best education providers and suppliers in the world. That itself has raised awareness. We're planning to host our own clinicians conference in 2027. And then internally, we've done a lot of things about bringing our clinicians closer together. So focusing on initiatives like that is a big part of where we're going. Our strategy has always been to acquire practices in market towns where we provide, that whole general complement of dentistry. So we have special interest and specialist dentists in all our practices to provide, the high quality private referral dentistry. 95% of our revenue as a group is private dentistry anyway. So we have very small kind of NHS ortho contracts, etc., and some practices. So we have a big focus on doing the right thing and getting the right dentistry provided to the right patient by the right clinician.
Sounds exciting. Watch
It,
this space.
it, Yeah, it isn't. I always say whenever I'm visiting clinicians, it is an exciting time. In the past year, we feel like we've done a lot of initiatives, certainly for clinicians, and we want to keep pushing that. We want to become the best place for clinicians to work in the UK and Channel Islands. So whenever they think about any of our practices, and we've started to see the benefits of that. One of our clinicians was leaving one of our practices and relocating due to the family moving, and she's now going into one of our other practices. So things like that show um, how clinicians are starting to see the benefit of being a Gen Smile clinician.
Yeah. Well, Asad, I've really enjoyed speaking with you today about your story and about just everything. It's been a lot of fun. So I really do want to thank you. I want to ask you one last question, which I
Yeah.
do like to ask people, which is this: if you're sitting here right now and suddenly, click of the finger, you bounce back in time and you knock into yourself, and there he is, like 18 to 20-year-old Assad, and you can just say one thing to him quickly before you're brought straight back to this moment. Quick caveat is that you're not allowed to say, buy Bitcoin in 2011 and there's this thing called YouTube and you should set it up. Something to do with, I suppose, his career and what he's going to do. What would you say?
I'd say going back to what I was mentioning at the start, I'd just say keep going, because there, in everybody's life and career, there will be tough moments and tough times. Um, but that one phrase, I suppose, uh, there's this. I'm sure you've seen it. There's this video that goes around online about Tom Hanks that says, "This too shall pass."
Oh,
So
yeah,
when whether that's a good moment or a bad moment, so that's, I think, the key message I'd give myself. And I'm lucky, I suppose. I had a lot of that ingrained in me. When I did the MBA, we did a lot of kind of psychometric analysis and things about learning about yourself. And what I realized is that I was naturally and I'm naturally quite resilient, which helps. But also, when it comes to the time, you have to showcase it. And I'd say that was my key message to my 20-year-old self, that just keep going. There's a lot of turbulent times ahead, but it works out well when you come out the other end.
love it. I love it. Assad, thank you so much.
My
Um,
pleasure, Hugo.
to everyone who's been listening, I definitely think you have to pay the tax for this one. So share it to one person, let someone know about the Grow Patiently podcast if they're in the healthcare clinic space or they're just looking for a podcast to talk about business. Um, other than that, Asad, how can people learn more about maybe you, the group, paddle? How can they maybe even get in touch if that's something you want, following you online, things like this?
Yes, I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn as well. So just my name, no funny handles. And I always say, anybody who reaches out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram, I always message back. So very happy to help. Anyone advise them on their career path, etc. Very happy to help. So please reach out.
Oh, bless you. That's very kind of you. Next thing you know, you'll have 1,000 people pitching you AI receptionists or something on LinkedIn DMs. I get
Yeah,
those
well,
ones all the time.
yeah, it's a big thing, AI, isn't it? And I think the more we focus on how we utilize it for our benefit and work with it as humans, I think that's the best way, rather than just going AI is the answer for all. I mean, you know this better than most.
I try not to get too worried about AI. I'm always having conversations with people and they're so worried about everything that's going to happen. But I keep saying that people were pretty fearful when humans came up with the written
Yeah,
word. They were thinking, oh my gosh, we're never going to remember things anymore, is going to be the downfall. And you can imagine being the guy who saw someone for the first time with a hammer. You must have thought, hold on a second, this
yeah,
is going to be the end of us. Although that being said, hammer can't attack you, and we don't know yet what AI is going to do. But yeah, in the meantime, ride the wave, enjoy it, and see what kind of great things you can do with it. And just use it for sensible things. Don't let it waste your time. That's what I think.
exactly,
Asad,
exactly.
thank you so, so much for today. I really
No,
appreciate it.
pleasure.
Listeners, thank you so much. See you next time. Thanks again, Asad.
Thanks, Sugar. Bye.